What is up, everybody? Sinestra here, and today we are taking a look at the Arcway. This dungeon was completed on Mythic difficulty because it is the lowest difficulty that this dungeon can be completed upon. Once reaching 8,000 rep into Honoured with the Nightfallen, you start a quest chain that unlocks both the Arcway and the Court of Stars. We are obviously going to be focusing on the Arcway today. This is a really fun dungeon with a lot of interesting mechanics, couple of interesting bosses, and overall, a lot of trash. This instance is all about trash management, and when we're talking about Mythic Plus difficulty, which is coming up very soon, you're going to be talking about making sure you're knowing what you're doing on this trash. As you can see, the first couple of mobs that we attack are these blob things. Some of them, the big green ones, try to eat you, whereas the smaller purple ones explode into lots of different versions. They're dropping pools on the floor, you need to move out of the green one when it tries to eat you, and you need to be burst AoEing down these small ads. Also, priests, shadow priests especially, use mass dispel as often as you can, help your healers out, get rid of those debuffs. As you can see here, I'm standing on one of the green slimes. Doesn't do a lot of damage on standard mythic. On Mythic Plus with modifiers though, that might be a big problem. Learning how to crowd control effectively while burst AoEing is something that's going to be really useful for you here. So make sure that as a Shadow Priest you're using your AoE stuns, you're using your silences to interrupt things, and other classes use the abilities and tools that were given to you. Hard CCs like hexes or sheeps may not be very useful in situations like this because you don't have a lot of targets that you can actually do that, but silencing, stunning, dispelling for your healers and things like that is always a really big plus. As you can see here, these big sort of like arcane images, they do a huge AoE pulse in front of them like a cleave. Make sure that you interrupt that ability when you see it coming, otherwise your healers get shame-jawed like ours did here. These ghost mobs that you can see us fighting now as well, these are a particularly nasty mob. On normal mythic, it's not too much of a problem, but what they do is they stack a debuff onto players that reduces the amount of healing they take. So you need to make sure that you're managing that ad as quickly as you can, because you're gonna, and if you can dispel them on like things like that, that's really useful. We're coming up to Lavanya, the first boss that's tiered on the actual dungeon journal. Not necessarily the first boss you'll do though. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But as you walk into Lavanya's room, all of his trash pulls at once, so just be careful that you know that you're going to be dotting and dealing with a spread out enemy. Perfect for Shadow Priests, other classes not so much. With regards to the actual Arcway itself, the route you'll take will be different every single time, because there are doors that lock or open depending on what day or whatever time Blizzard decides that they open. So the route you choose to go through the dungeon will be different every time. We're doing Lavanya first, just because he was the door that was easiest for us to get through as we walked into the dungeon. So, Lavanya, what does he do? He's a pretty easy boss, to be honest, and you're about to see us start engaging him now. He's all about interrupts. He has an ability called Overcharge Mana. This needs to be interrupted, otherwise the boss gains a buff called Overcharge. What Overcharge does is give the boss 15% haste and, 15%? 5% increased damage done per stack. Excuse me. So make sure that you're interrupting this, have an interrupt rotation. Not as really as important on normal mythic difficulty, because you can kind of ruffle stomp through this if you're already in 845 to 850 gear, but on Mythic Plus it will perform more of a challenge. You can see here his second ability, which is called Volatile Magic. This links 3 players together with a beam and then drops a huge patch of like AoE guff on the floor that needs to be avoided. Healers, if people stand in that, they're going to take significant damage, so just be prepared for that. Tanks have nothing special to worry about on this boss. It's all about just making sure those interrupts go off. Because the more of those interrupts that don't get done, the more damage he's going to do to you. So as a tank, make sure that you're calling interrupts, and that's pretty much it. Dodge AoE shit on the floor, and everything will go down breezy. That's Lavanya. He's a pretty easy boss. It's a good introduction though, dropping the stuff on the floor, things like that. On Mythic Plus with a couple of modifiers, he might be a little bit more interesting. But he's probably the weakest of all the bosses in here. Everything else is actually pretty cool. So now we've killed Lavanya, we're going to start making our way down to the second boss that was available for us, Corstalax. Corstalax is like this huge arcane golem thing that you've seen running around Suramar all the time. Also, by the way, you just saw us pick up a quest item. If you're doing the Court of Stars quest line, that's where it is. It was just in that corner there as a scroll. So just make sure you keep your eyes open for that if it's your first time in the dungeon. Now, from Lavanya to Corstalax, the way we're going doesn't have a lot of trash. So it's actually literally just through one room, and you just have to clear out Corstalax's arena. This boss, Corstalax, he's a pretty easy boss again. It's more about managing a set of debuffs and breaking out players when they get trapped, but we'll talk more about that in a second. The trash you can see here is like spawning a shield that you need to make sure that you're trying to like move them out of, because that AoE is going to do damage to you as well. And there's a couple of targeted enemies that you've seen before in MOP and things like that, so just make sure that you're moving behind them to DPS them. Pretty easy stuff, guys. The Arcway, it's like, once you understand how this trash works, it's all manageable really, really easily, and it's just about dealing with that. So Corstalax, what do we have to deal with here? Damage dealers, he's going to put pools down the floor called Nightwell Energy. These give you 15% haste every time you stand in one of them. They're super OP, especially for Shadow Priest, where we're all about haste. Run around, get in them, but just be wary of the mechanic that we're going to talk about soon. You're also going to get players that get quarantined into a big crystal that I will point out in a minute. What you need to do is make sure that you are breaking players out. You can see the pools that I'm running over now that I give the haste. You can see them here, and now you can see me getting quarantined. All of the other players need to come and break me out quickly. Once they've broken me out, then we can go back to DPSing the fight as normal. Now, tanks has an ability called Exterminate, which the boss does. You just need to make sure that you're facing the raid away from it. The party away from it when that casts. Pretty easy stuff. And then the last thing is something called Suppression Protocol. Now, what Suppression Protocol does is drag everybody into the boss. Now, if you've taken these buffs, these debuffs here that give you all the haste, if you get within 15 yards of him when Suppression Aura goes off, you're going to get stunned. So you don't want to, you just want to make sure that as you see Suppression Aura coming up, install Little Wigs or DPM. Little Wigs is working a bit better at the moment with Legion launch, so I would highly recommend that version. As you see that coming up, move as far away as you possibly can. Move to max range, just so that when you get dragged in, you don't hit that 15 yards and don't get stunned. And then you've got easy peasy, lots of damage to do. But as you can see here, boss is going down pretty easily. Corstalax is done. That's another really good bag of loot for you. Now, next for us on the boss list was Naltira, the Spider Queen. But before that, yet again, it's not a lot of trash down to Naltira, because we actually ended up with a fairly easy route, which is almost exactly what the dungeon guide went as to. There was only one boss that was switched around for us. So as you have to fight through this group of withered guys, they do pretty little pools on the floor that you need to make sure you don't stand in, and they also do a big frontal like AoE cone ability that you need to make sure that you're interrupting. Really easy. Just make sure that, yet again, you're using your big stuns, you're using your silences, you're just using as much crowd control you can, and you're dispelling everything that comes up. Because dispels seem to be the flavour of the month for these dungeons. It's all about making sure you don't have lots of debuffs. Once we do that, we move down into Naltira's room. Naltira's room is kind of like a spidery gauntlet, but warning, pre-warning, nuking the crap out of these spiders like that with a fire mage, not a good idea. Because the debuff that when they die, they explode, right? And so without a massive party cooldown, you're going to have a problem there. So make sure that you don't just burst those down without considering the fact that you're going to have to deal with the spiders. And as on our way back, one of these glidey ghosts that puts the healing debuff decided she was going to wander into our path, so we had to deal with that. But Naltira's sort of gauntlet area is a pretty easy thing to deal with. Oh my god, there was another one? I can't remember this. Man, we got like so unlucky on this run back with trash. There was so much freaking stuff. There's a lot in here, guys. Like, a Mythic Plus with like the trash bar that you need to fill up, you're not going to have a problem with this place. I swear to God, you're going to be done with all of the trash you need to kill by about 2 bosses in, and it's going to be all about trying to skip as much as possible. Here we go. We're back into the Naltira room. Once the little spiders are dead, she spawns big packs of spiders. These big packs of spiders like to try and eat you. So make sure that you are nuking down the ones that are eating people, because it does a lot of damage. And that's just on normal Mythic. Imagine on Mythic Plus when they're doing like 50% increased damage or some shit, whatever modifiers you get. That's going to be real nasty. So make sure that you're breaking people out of spiders that are eating them. Once you have completed all of her gauntlet, Naltira descends from the ceiling, and first off, before we start, what a cool-ass model. That's probably one of the coolest looking spider models I've ever seen. She could just do with being a bit bigger, to be honest, because she's so freaking cool. But what do you actually need to worry about with Naltira? Pretty easy, to be honest. Don't stand in poison pools. She's going to spawn little spider ads, make sure you kill them, and she's also going to teleport onto players and do a massive cleave. So when she teleports to you, run the fuck away. Real easy, right? Pretty fun fight though. There's only one other mechanic that you can see, which is a ability called Tangled Web, where she's going to tether 2 players together. You just need to run in opposite directions from each other and break that tether. Real easy. You can see the poison poise on the floor now. You can see these like greeny purple little patches, and she's just cast Tangled Web. She's linked me to another player there. We're running away from each other. in the right direction that time. Chain breaks, does a bit of damage. Healers, just beware of that. And now she's going to spawn these little spiders. Just need to make sure that you're grouping them down, tanks are taunting them in, and you're killing them as quickly as possible. As they're gonna, if they eat people, that's just more unnecessary damage. Poison pool has spawned on me at that point. Make sure you just move out of it and deal with Tangled Web. Easy fight, interesting mechanics. When stuff does a lot more damage in Mythic Plus, gonna be a little bit more fun, I think. But still a fun encounter. Not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun. A lot of fun. I enjoyed Nutella actually. In fact, both of the new Sorima dungeons are a lot of fun. Court Stars. When I eventually get a good run of that, I will put a video up about it. But Jesus Christ, I've been struggling to get a good run at the minute, because like until we worked out what the hell we were doing, because I didn't get to do those on beta, so this is my time like learning. That's why it's taken a little while for me to get you a good video, guys. I do apologize about the wait for these. But yeah, once you've done that, Altera dies. Pretty easy, and then you move on to us. For us in this run, our last boss was General Zakal. But before that, we have to get through some of the most pain in the ass trash in this instance. This trash, more than ever, is all about interrupts, because there are things that you don't want to happen here. This guy does these like Inquisitors, they do a huge AoE pulse. Make sure you're interrupting that, and the Eridars have a couple of abilities that need to be interrupted. One of them is like a transformation, which turns them into big demon guys that do way more damage that your tanks and healers have to deal with. So try and just interrupt transformation when you see it. And then there's the big Fel Lords that do Open Fel Portal. If they don't interrupt Open Fel Portal, what happens is like a load of Fel Hounds and a load of dogs come out, and it's just way more trash for you to deal with. And when you're facing a timer on Mythic Plus, that's the last thing that you want. So make sure you're interrupting that whenever you can. This room here, the way we come into it may be different to the way you come into it, but it's kind of dangerous on trash, so you need to be careful when you're walking into it. Pull the stuff on the right hand side first, then pull this middle pack, but watch out for these little guys on the left that you see that we actually managed to get. This was a real problem for us because it sort of like did way too much damage, so we had to kind of like kite back. So if you need to line of sight things, don't be afraid to. But you can see here, I left these wipes in just to kind of show you, like, this is the learning process that we had, where we learned that trash was not what, like, you had to be careful about that pack. Because the last thing, I feel that, like, you seeing that is actually better than you not seeing it. Because it's like, oh, we all fuck up. And you need to make sure that you kind of, like, learn the right way to do things. So line of sight this pack out of here so you don't overpull. Make sure that you're interrupting the Fel Lord so he doesn't cast Portal and get a load more ads, and make sure you're interrupting the Eridars so they don't transform into massive demons. You can see here, this guy's going berserk. That's a lot of tank damage. Make sure you're killing and stunning that as soon as you can. Now, we chose to here go up the stairs, I think, and clear the trash to the boss first. So before we moved on to the last boss, just so that when we came out of the General Zakal, we didn't have to deal with hit the trash on the way to the final boss. At least I think we did. Did we not? That was another run. I'm really sorry. That was another run. If you want to, kill the trash at the top of the stairs so you can get to the final boss quicker. That would be my recommendation. Unless, of course, you're coming in this way, and then that's already done. Yet again, you're getting another Fel Lord and a couple of packs of Eridar here. Interrupts a key, stuns, silences. Keep making sure you're using them just so that you can help your healers. You can see we didn't get an interrupt off there, and you can see one of the Eridar is transformed into this kind of like Fel Lord thing. He's going to chuck a lot of fire on the floor. He's going to deal a lot of tank damage. Make sure that you're interrupting that. It's really important. But you can see here that we're learning. You can see here, but we're learning about priority as we're running this. We're like, okay, so that mob needs interrupting first because that ability is way hardcore, more hardcore than the other one. But you can see here we're coming up to the final trash pack before General Zakal. It's an Inquisitor. Interrupt him so he doesn't do his AoE pulse. Interrupt the Eridar so he doesn't transform. Kill the cross because he just does a lot of cleave damage. That's really, really not great. So General Zakal, it's Zakoon, but slightly different. If you did Zakoon in HFC, you'll pretty much be okay with this boss. He does a huge AoE wave in front of him that you need to avoid. He spawns like fel puddles on the floor that you need to not stand in. He's going to spawn in bats that the tank needs to taunt because he's going to be very difficult, because he also does a huge AoE frontal cleave that the tank needs to turn him away from the party for. So try and tank him where he is. Turn him round so the tank is facing into the room and he's facing the wall where he spawns. And that's pretty much it, guys. But let's talk you through some specific mechanics. So he has an ability called Wicked Slam, which slams his axe into the ground, dealing 500,000 damage to all players, knocking them back. So that's why the tank turns it around so that your like range and your healers aren't getting hit by that, because that'd be really kind of bad. He spawns these little purple pools, and you can see the wave that left a big patch on the floor as well. Don't stand in the waves, don't stand in the pools, don't stand in those circly things because they're going to stun you as well. So like it's just about avoiding crap on the floor and making sure that the tank gets the ads when they spawn. Hunters, if you're a hunter in here, misdirect is super useful. Anybody else, just make sure that you're sort of like holding off on your DPS for just a second until your tank picks them up. He's got to be looking at lot of really, really happy kneecaps on that guy, so you need to make sure that you give him some time to pick that up. But other than that, General Sakal is pretty easy. If you did Zakun in HFC, you can do this guy, not a problem. He's really, really easy. But we're going to start thinking about moving on to the last boss, Advisor Vandross, and he's a cool boss. I really like him. You can see they're not moving for the wave because I think I was casting Void Torrent, and that's really, really lazy of me. Don't be doing like me, guys. Be better than me. Be better than me. Once that boss is done, we made our way back this way into the main room where we started, where the final boss has now spawned. Now, quick heads up, the map is kind of important. Knowing like the routes around the dungeon is kind of key for this because of one of the abilities that we're going to be talking about on the last boss. So have a good look at the map and kind of like familiarize yourself with the way that the dungeon is laid out and the routes back to the very start of the dungeon from any point, because that's going to be pretty key soon, but you'll see why. So once you sort of like come in here, make sure that you kill any of the trash that you may have left in this central area. Now, we didn't actually have to go through the central area, so the boss cleared out a lot of it, but there are still the wandering ghosts that reduce the healing debuff. So what you see here coming up is us just finishing off one of those ghosts before we pull the boss. And you see me reading the dungeon journal furiously to try and work out what I need to be doing. As you can tell from the beta guides where I didn't read the dungeon journal for a lot of stuff, this time I actually paid a little bit more attention and read some abilities beforehand so I didn't just horribly fail. But we chose to kill this ghost first before we pull the boss, just so that we didn't have her run into the arena. So, Advisor Vandross, what do we need to know here? Tanks. Make sure you don't stack the boss on chrono shards. You'll see them, they spawn. It's really bad. He blows them up, deals a lot of party damage, and also move the boss away from force bombs. Force bombs explode, dealing a massive wave and cleave, so make sure that you kind of like keep the boss away from them. You have a lot of space to play with. As soon as he spawns a chrono shard or a force bomb, just move him. Just move the boss. It's really, really easy. There you can see these little the little shards. Move the hell away from them because they explode, dealing a crap ton of damage. You can see here we were kind of like okay, and we thought it was okay, but if you move on top of him like this and they move on top of players, you need to move because on Mythic they hurt, on Mythic Plus they're going to be a nightmare. And here you can see the bombs. Move the boss away from the bombs just so that you can deal with the wave, the Nova when it happens. And then he's going to transport everyone at a certain point into a different point of the map. I was not ready for that. Once he transports you, he's going to put you at a random location in the dungeon, right? You need to run back to him and interrupt him. On your way, you need to kill the ghosts that spawn and just avoid the chrono shards that are there because they're going to explode and deal a lot of damage. So this is kind of like why you needed to know like the routes for the dungeon, because you need to be able to sort of like very quickly identify your route back and start moving, because these chrono shards just start spawning, and the longer you stay in the same place, the denser the packing of chrono shards bit gets, and the denser it gets, the harder they come to avoid, and the more of them you hit, the more damage you're going to take. So keeping moving constantly is something that needs to happen. So make sure that you kind of are aware of how you're going to get back to the boss the quickest way possible, kill the ghosts on the way, stay together as a team, keep as a pack, and avoid the shards as you move. Pretty sort of like self-explanatory, but just like knowing like the little bits, like the nuances about moving as a pack and things like that, and avoiding stuff and not standing still for too long is really, really important. So make sure that you're doing that, guys. But once you do that, you run up and kill a couple more ghosts on your way. We had a lot of ghosts on this way back. I've done runs with this since that we didn't have nearly as many ghosts, but we had to run an awful long way this time. We actually got teleported quite far away. But you can see that all the doors on the map were gone, so at least you can kind of run back whichever way you can. Once you get back to the boss, you just cast on him, that interrupts him, and then you just carry on killing him as you would normally. Move him away from the chrono shards, move him away from the force bombs, kite him around and use the space that you have. DPS, the only thing you really got to do is interrupt something called Accelerating Blast. This increases the damage he does, so just make sure that it's getting interrupted. Tanks can help, Shadow Priest you can help with silence, mages can help, Death Knights, everybody's got an interrupt now pretty much. Everybody and their mum's got an interrupt, so make sure that you're using a rotation. You should have at least 4 in any group. So just have a quick chat beforehand, sort that out. Deal with the Novas guys, and you get to kill Advisor Vandross and get some fat loot and hope for the Chrono Shard drops, and it never does because trinkets are a dick and you don't get any trinkets. I'm not salty about trinkets or anything, but thanks very much for watching this video guide, guys. I hope that you get all the loot you want in the Arcway. It's a really fun dungeon. I can't wait for Mythic Plus. Court Stars is coming as quickly as possible. A couple of other things as well. Thank you to everyone who's new on the channel. It's been a pleasure to have you here. I've really loved having you here, and I love all the love that I'm getting from all the dungeon guides. I'm so glad that they're useful. But for now, guys, I hope you have a great day. You've been amazing. I've been Sinestra, and I'll catch you in the next one.